Hey everyone, as promised, I thought I'll do the video going over the midterm exam. So this is just to go over what you can expect on the exam, what are the contents, what kind of questions, how do you prepare, and so on and so forth. So let's get going. Okay, so the specifics are, of course, I've announced this several times. So the exam will be during the regular lecture hours, Monday, week 7, 25th October. The midterm makes up 20 marks towards your final grade. And strictly speaking, there's no such thing as a pass or a fail on the midterm, because you get a pass or a fail on the for the course, right? And there is no hurdle for the midterm. The final exam has a hurdle, but we'll talk about that later. The midterm exam does not have a hurdle for passing the course, which means there's no minimum marks you need in the midterm exam to pass the course. The exam will be an online exam. We will be using a platform called Inspera, and the link to the exam will be available through the Moodle page, of the course. The precise timing for the exam will be as noted here. So we'll start the exam precisely at 9:30 and end at 10:40. So 70 minutes. There's no separate reading time. You must answer all questions. Each question has a different mark, as will be noted in the exam. There will be no negative marking in the sense that the minimum mark on any question will be 0, right? There won't be an actual lecture on that day. We'll just do the 70-minute exam and that's it, right? The exam is open book, open notes, open web, calculators. Yeah, you might need a calculator for a question or two. So certainly have one handy. There are many online calculators, or your computer might have a calculator as well. One recommendation I can strongly give is to download all the lecture notes and homework sets and anything really that you might need from WebCMS. You might ask why? Well, if there are about roughly 470 students enrolled in the course at the moment, if each and every one of you tries to access lecture notes on the WebCMS server, I cannot guarantee that the server won't slow down, right? It is, after all, being hosted on it's a high performance machine, but at the same time, I do not know if it will support that load. We've had issues with other courses and even this course in the past. So to avoid this, if many of you download everything that you need onto your local machine, that will avoid potential bottlenecks, right? So I would strongly recommend you do that. I have updated all lecture notes with answers to all the quizzes and stuff. So I don't expect any further updates unless there are some genuine errors or stuff like that. But you could always wait till, say, the day before the exam and go in and download everything that you need. There will be a Zoom meeting. So if you have I will be online. So if you have any questions, you can join the Zoom meeting link and post your questions in the chat. Just make sure you do not turn on your microphone or your camera. In fact, this is the same Zoom meeting we use for the lectures. And in any case, I've posted the Zoom meeting link on the exam page, and I'll also circulate a notice with all these important details. Everything that you need is on the midterm exam page. So basically, this page, which should now be accessible, will have all the information you need. So here we have information about the exam. So here, for example, is the meeting link. Okay. Some other things for you to read. Terms and conditions. This is the video that you're seeing. It will be linked here. It will also be in the regular YouTube and Echo 360 feeds. These are the slides I'm going to show you. This is a sample exam. So this will actually take you to Moodle. It will ask you to log into Moodle. I've already logged in, so it will directly take me to the exam. So this is a sample exam I've set for you. This will open on Thursday, 14th October at 10 a.m. So this gives you a flavor of the actual exam platform. What I've also done is now mind you, the exam you can only attempt once, this one. So do not just go in for the sake of going in, because then your attempt is gone basically, and you won't be able to actually go through the exam. So only attempt the exam when you're ready, when you really want to try it out and sort of mimic the exam setting and get a feel for the Inspera platform. So I strongly discourage you from immediately jumping in. Okay. Do it after a few days once you've sort of prepared and are in an actual well-prepared state to do the exam. I've also, and once you do the exam and complete it, you will be able to see the answers and stuff like that. So you'll have access to that. But I've also put up the sample exam with answers here as a PDF, just in case something goes wrong with Inspera, you attempt it without being prepared and stuff like that, right? So certainly you can access that later. I will, once the exam is ready, I'll put an actual link to the exam up here. Okay. And I'll also circulate that through the notices. So that will be for the actual exam, the real exam, right? This is just a practice sample exam. Okay. So that's all that you need to see on the exam page. If you are an ELS student and you have submitted us your documentation, we will be emailing you next week and advise you of your arrangements. So just wait for our email next week. Okay, so let's now go over some of the key topics that probably you might expect questions on. So if you look at the introduction, which was essentially week 1 and some part of the first lecture in week 2. So some of the key concepts we talked about include packet switching, circuit switching, a bit about how the internet is organized, some performance issues, particularly the delay. You may recall the 4 kinds of delays: propagation, processing, queuing, and transmission. And then, of course, the end-to-end throughput. Then we talked about protocol layering, right? So, but I mean, it's not necessary that you'll get a question on each of these, but any of this could be examinable. I could ask you some basic probability. Now, remember, in the packet switching context, you can really formulate that as a complex probability computation. Now, certainly, I won't expect you to work through that in the exam, but I could certainly ask you some basic questions on probability in that context, right? Or for that matter, in any context. I mean, this basic probability is something we assume you know. I won't ask you any questions on the physical media because we kind of skipped over that in the lectures. And of course, add nothing on that introductory. I mean, even if I wanted to, I couldn't really ask you any questions because this is just some very high level introduction, right? And then, of course, nothing on history. Next, looking at the applications, which is week 2, week 3, some basic principles we covered. We spent a lot of time on the web and HTTP, so you can certainly expect something on that. Email, we kind of only looked at SMTP, so if at all, there might be something on that. And then we spent almost a whole lecture, I think, on DNS, so you can certainly expect something on DNS. And then some aspects of P2P, BitTorrent, DHT, and the streaming and CDN discussions, right? What won't be asked is, of course, secure HTTPS, because we really haven't covered it. HTTP version 2, IMAP or POP, which we didn't cover. Some of the ending stuff, the stuff towards the end of the DNS discussion, like DNS security, DNS over TLS, DNSSEC, DNS HTTP over HTTP, and so on and so forth. And of course, there's nothing, no programming questions. So you won't be asked to write code. in the exam. And then finally, the transport layer, which is what we've been looking at more recently. So that includes the principals, sockets, UDP and TCP sockets, UDP itself, which is fairly simple, reliable data transfer. So here you might get some conceptual questions. So do remember, these conceptual questions are not specific about TCP, right? This is just conceptually different ways to implement our reliable data transfer. And we looked at the stop and wait style protocols, and then the sliding window style go back and selective repeat. So just make sure you're not mixing these up, right? So the question will make it clear whether I'm asking you something specific to TCP or just as a general concept. And then when it comes to TCP, everything that we covered till midway in Wednesday's lecture, Wednesday week 5 lecture, would be on the exam. So that's basically where we finish the connection management stuff, right? So right at that, you won't have any questions on congestion control. So the later half of the second lecture in week 5 is excluded. Of course, QUIC, which we didn't cover, or HTTP3 as it's called, will be excluded. I won't ask you very complex checksum computations, because if I ask you to compute a whole checksum, that will unnecessarily take you a long time, but certainly I can ask you some simplified calculations on it. No programming, as I already said, and nothing that like the lab where we asked you to actually run a trace route or ping, nothing of that sort. So you won't be asked to use any tools as such. Okay. So what kind of questions? So a lot of these questions are very similar to the homework questions and even the sample exam that you will work through. So there'll be perhaps a limited set of multiple choice, some questions where you're required to type in your answers, few sentences, and some other questions not had that may require more elaborate explanations. Where unless you're explicitly told not to, you should be showing some of the intermediate steps and arguments if relevant, right? Now, mind you, none of these are cut and sort of memory tests. So I'm not going to ask you something you can easily find in the lecture notes, easily find in the textbook and just cut and paste, right? So it will be all about examining you on how you have understood the concepts and whether you can critically sort of apply them in the context of some scenario, right? So it's all about critical analysis skills, as it says there, right? It's very unlikely that the questions you'll get you would have seen before. So these will be sort of new questions, or at least put in a new setting, right? So how do you prepare? Of course, you need a good understanding of the concepts. So you shouldn't be reading something for the first time in the exam. If that is happening, you of course probably are better off moving on to the next question, because you can't be reading something for the first time there. You need to know the concepts, and just if you need to look up something, you can quickly look it up in the lecture slides, right? So of course you need to practice, because if you just keep reading stuff, if you keep reading the homework questions, if you just keep reading answers, if you just read the midterm sample exam and not actually try to solve it, I suspect you will have trouble during the exam, because you haven't really practiced how to solve questions. All you have done is read the answers, right? So that there's a big disconnect between that, just reading solutions and actually attempting. So that's why I keep stressing here. You must try to attempt the questions, and then you can look at the solutions to compare, right? Whether your solution is correct. So the practice exam I showed you, it will be available Thursday, 10 a.m. So make sure you attempt it. And as I said, you can only do it once. So only attempt it when you're ready. Do not just sort of think, okay, I'll just have a quick look, because if you do that, you have exhausted your attempt, and then you cannot actually go in and attempt the exam anymore, right? So please make sure you're doing it when you're ready, as a real practice to the actual exam, right? Now, once you're done with the exam, it will immediately show you the answers. I mean, some of the questions that are MCQ will be marked right away. The questions that are sort of essay type, of course, no one is going to mark it for you because it's a sample exam, but you will have access to the solution. So you can always compare your answer with the solution, right? And just in case someone does actually attempt the exam when they're not ready, just so that you're not disadvantaged, I have put up a PDF with both the questions and answers of the exam on the midterm page. But please, by all means, that does not mean you should not attempt the exam in Inspera. Please do that, just so that you're familiar with the exam environment and just so that there are no surprises on the day of the exam. So in fact, there's a video here which shows you an overview of the exam. And there's also a Inspera research page. In fact, these two are linked from the Moodle page of this course. So if you go to the Moodle page, you'll find these links at the bottom. Now, if you have any questions for us, as you have been doing, just post them on the forums. We are generally pretty quick with our responses. Please do check if if the question is already there, because that will save everyone some time. So when you're posting stuff on Ed, there's a search bar, so you can type in some of the keywords and see if if the question is already posted. So that way you can then just quickly find the answer there, rather than waiting for us to respond. My consults, weekly consults are Thursdays, 3 to 4. So of course I'll be available then, but I'll also announce one more consult. So I'll make that announcement early next week. So very likely the second consult will be on Friday. So that way you have some time to prepare and ask me questions towards the end of the week. Right? So Thursday 1 hour and Friday 1 hour is what I'll plan. On the day of the exam, now, of course, the exam is fairly early in the morning. I do appreciate some of you are in different time zones. Now, mind you, I didn't pick the time for the lectures, so I don't have much control. I tried to push it half an hour, so at least we start at 9:30 and not 9. And I cannot do the exam on Wednesday. That's too late in the week to do the exam, right? Ideally, I would have liked to do the exam week 5, but then that's too early, and we are not allowed to do any examinations in week 6. So the best I can do is the first lecture of week 7, right? That said, make sure you have good sleep, you've eaten something, have some water handy, make sure you're in a quiet place where there's no disturbance, make sure your internet is working fine, and you're comfortable, right? So at least you're removing all the other factors. Now, if you do get a question that you aren't able to figure out, don't panic and stress, just move on to the next question, right? And that way you can get through the other questions and then always come back. It's possible to navigate through the questions in Inspera. It's not like once you move forward, you cannot go back, right? Now, in the way the Inspera works is if you don't if the time runs out and you haven't actually submitted, that's fine. It will collect everything and pack that up, take it all in. So it's okay if you don't actually hit the final submit button. Whatever you have answered will automatically get corrected. So don't worry about that. Inspera is a very stable platform. Even I used it last term. Many others have used it. So it's running fairly smoothly, right? If at all you encounter technical issues, just take some screenshots and contact us either via Zoom. I would prefer Zoom because we are just online there, or you could always email us. It will be difficult for me to man the Ed forum during the exam in parallel with running the Zoom session. So don't expect any instant responses on Ed forum on the exam day, right? Use the Zoom meeting and ask us questions there if you have questions on the exam. So that's all. That's all I have. Good luck. Make sure you prepare well, and may the force be with you. So bye. I'll see you all on exam day now or online on the forum. Bye-bye.